In today's mod spotlight, we're going to be taking a look at the Radious Total War mod. This mod is a very detailed and substantial overhaul of Total War Warhammer. It makes a ton of dynamic changes to the campaign, new buildings, new tech trees, and a lot of new units. Also, something else of note in this mod is that they did make some pretty substantial changes to the way magic works. So now in this mod, you do start with 50 wins of magic, which is huge. And on top of that, pretty much all the spells in general have had their cost reduced. So you're going to be seeing a lot more Purple Son of Xeris, the Flame Storm, just kind of all those bombardment abilities that don't get a lot of love in vanilla Total War Warhammer. So guys, it definitely makes for some very large scale epic battles. So what we're going to do for the sake of this video, perhaps we'll do a different video and take a look at the campaign and some of the tech trees they've changed. But today guys, we're going to be just looking at some of the factions they've added. And as you guys can see, there have been a ton of factions added, each of which has pretty unique units. And of course, the vanilla factions have also had a lot of units added to them as well. So at the end of this video, after we go ahead and focus today on the Empire and the Beastmen, we're going to have a thematic battle between Boris Todbringer and Khazrak One Eye. And for any of you guys that are interested in trying out this mod or just looking through all the different units, there will indeed be a link in the description box below. Because if I took the time to go through like every single unit that was added to all of these rosters, it would probably be like a 2 or 3 hour video because it is very, very dense, guys. So firstly, let's go ahead and take a look at the Empire. So at the top, you can see that there's a bunch of vanilla lords, but take note of their stats. Their stats have been pretty substantially changed. So you can see here, Karl has a little bit more armor. His weapon strength has been raised. Minor adjustments in regards to his melee defense and whatnot. And something I really noticed about this mod is that in these battles, they last very long and army losses doesn't really hit you. Because that's one of the disappointing things when you're in like a last stand situation. You have a lord that could potentially like turn the tide of a battle, but you just lose to army losses. It definitely takes away a little bit from the fun and from thematics. And this mod has done a very good job of addressing that. So regardless, you can see the vanilla lords up top. Here you have your casters. And if we look at the Winds of Magic costs, you can see Nets of Amnitok costs 8. And let's actually look at something with more vortex ability. So yes, the Flamestorm here costs 11. I think it used to cost like 16. The Burning Head only costs 8 as well, and they have also had their damage scaled. If I'm not mistaken, I haven't done substantial testing, but it seems that way. So this is where the real core of the changes have been. Look at how dense this infantry list is. So you have these units, Leopold's Company, which are an anti-large and anti-infantry kind of dynamic unit. You have the Death's Heads, you have Drakewald Drakewald Gruncaps. On top of that, you have some very cool new state troops. You have Armored Spearmen. So these are essentially kind of the rank and file troops. You can see these ones have 37 armor, but you can get an armored variant that do have these silver shields as opposed to the bronze. So Armored Spearmen, Armored Swordsmen, you can get Veteran Swordsmen on top of that, and Veteran Halberds, which are kind of the next evolution of these guys. And then you get some very, very cool thematic units. You get the Imperial Foot Soldiers, which are like heavily armored frontline troops. And you guys will be seeing these units showcased in the battle that I play between myself and Black Iron. On top of that, you get these Knights of More Halberdiers. I got to get that pronunciation right. I know I've been mangling that quite a bit. You get the Knights of More Swordsmen, which are, again, damage-dealing infantry, pretty good leadership, very, very high melee defense. You get the Altdorf Company of Honor, which is an anti-large unit. You just have a ton of options to really kind of custom tailor these thematic armies. And something else that I'd like to comment on about this mod is, considering all the changes they added, guys, it seems pretty well balanced. I'm very impressed with it. Every battle I've had so far, and I've played about 3 or 4, have been very, very close and very down to the wire. So whoever, not whoever, but the creators of this mod have done an outstanding job of balancing this considering how many units there are. So on top of that, these are probably my favorite units that have been added in the mod. The Hammers of Sigmar and the Warrior Priests of Sigmar. And then on top of that, you get the Warrior Priests of Ulrich. So guys, you can actually field like a full group of these heavily armored, just tank Warrior Priests who get in there and just get down and dirty. In the back, you do also have dismounted Knights of the Blazing Sun, as well as dismounted Knights of the Blazing Sun with swords. So they also added some new missile units. These ones are probably my favorite, the Hawkland Long Rifles. So these guys have 200 range. So they're basically like these Imperial snipers that you can put on the high ground, like up on some high ground or in the far distance, and they can just pick things off. You also have Nuln Engineers. So these guys are like traditional missile units. They actually work. So it's not like traditional grenade launchers in vanilla. These guys have 100 range, and they actually hit very, very hard. And I had some pretty good success with them in the battle that you guys are about to see. Top of that, you do have your typical regiments of renown. Here you do have huntsmen. So these guys literally look like the Rangers from Lord of the Rings. They have like hoods, very good range, 180. They do have Vanguard deployment. I don't think they have stock, but it's a pretty cool thing to add to the Empire. Definitely adds a lot of flexibility there. Down here on the cab, you do have Knights of the Hammer of Sigmar. These guys are great. I actually do use a group here, and you guys probably noticed that they do have the Lance formation down here. So, I mean, obviously they're not going to be lancing, but they can get in that formation to get that charge bonus. So a lot of changes to the Empire, guys. Mainly in the infantry, you can see there's tons of new units, as well as missile units. You have Death's Head handgunners. You have Drakewald Gunderman's Surefires. So you just have tons of options. It's really neat. So on top of that, guys, I'm going to be facing off against the Beastmen in today's matchup. So the Beastmen, Vanilla Lords, of course. If you go ahead and take a look at Malagor, you can see that the Winds of Magic on a lot of his spells have been lowered, if I'm not mistaken. Not on all of them, but on some. They have all their traditional casters, but guys, here are the really cool units. So they have different kind of gores or bestigors that are themed around a chaos god. So you have pestigors, which are the Nurgle gores. So these guys have poison. They also appear to have some magic resist of 15%, but are very tanky and resilient, as is kind of the way that Nurgle likes to roll. On top of that, you have Khorne gores, which have an anti-infantry bonus, and they also do have Primal Fury, a frenzy mechanic, makes sense for Khorne. On top of that, you have Zon gores. So the Zon gores are the heavy armor-piercing troops. You do also have frenzy. It looks like these guys all have some of them have charge defense against all, which is incredibly powerful for Beastmen units who often get run down by Empire Cav. And of course you have Slongors. So Slongors look to have a little bit more armor piercing than the Zongors, but what is the differential? So some minor stat differences. It looks like actually the Slongors are a little bit superior in every way. Granted, they do cost more and they do not have the frenzy mechanic. Okay, so that's what it is. So the Zongors may be a little bit stronger, in traditional combat when the frenzy is up. Aside from that, you do get some Ungor Poison Hunters, so you get some more. These guys are really strong. I mean, having a cheap missile unit that can apply poison is pretty game-changing. You also get some new units on the bottom. You get Gore Hoofs, which are a new anti-large Gore unit. Very, very strong. And you also get a cheap chariot, which is a Tusk Gore chariot, which you guys will indeed see in the battle. Down here, these are by far the coolest units. You get the Khorne Bulls, which just sounds like, I don't know why, that one just sounded ridiculous to me, but they get an anti-infantry bonus. Damage dealers, of course, you get the Plague Bulls, which have poison, kind of staying in line with a lot of the gores that you saw above, but the Plague Bulls actually have regeneration. So you guys are going to see Black Iron definitely get some really good value out of these guys. Then you got the Slann Bulls over here and the Zon Bulls on the far side. So guys, it is a very, very fun mod, and before we get started, I'll show you guys some of the other factions. So we have the Border Princes, who have some cool units, but again, if I go through all of these, it's just going to take so long. So you have the Border Princes, who have been added. You also have Astalia, who has some Conquistadors and things like that. You have the Kislev, who have these Boyars Chosen over here. You have the Scaling, so you also have Norscan tribes, and we will be doing a Norscan video as well, so Norska versus Kislev. You have Nurgle Aspirants, you have Crimson Skull Cultists, you have Tzeentch Aspirants. It can go on forever, guys. You have the Varg down here, and even if you just look at Chaos, I mean, you have Dark Prince Warriors, Chosen of Slaanesh. It is a very, very detailed, heavy-duty mod. So guys, without further ado, we're going to go ahead and jump into the battle between Boris Todbringer and the Modified Empire against the Modified Beastmen, who are going to be led by Khazrak One-Eye. Let the games begin. And now it is time for the final showdown between the forces of Boris Todbringer, who are going to be facing off against the bestial hordes of Khazrak One-Eye. So before we begin this battle, let us go ahead and take a look at some of the new units that have been added with the Radious mod, and we can go from there. So in the front line of my eastern flank, I do have the Warrior Priests of Sigmar, who are a very heavily armored frontline troop, 117 armor, pretty much unbreakable leadership with 95, and on top of that, they do provide benediction to nearby troops, so they have the traditional ability of Warrior Priest that does exist in vanilla Total War Warhammer. Behind them, they're going to be supported by the Leopold's Leopard Company, which are a jack-of-all-trades infantry. Not the best stats, but guys, if you need anti-infantry, they do have that, and then they also do have anti-large, so you could, detach them from the front line and have them help out if some cav get into your flanks back there. On top of that, I do have the Hochland Long Rifles, which are basically an Imperial Sniper. They have 200 range. So if you think about that in terms of vanilla, I think the furthest range I have seen on the missile units, and correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but I think Wood Elves have 180 on the Deepwood Scouts or 170. So these guys are definitely serious business, and they do have armor-piercing attacks. They're going to be backed up by the Imperial Foot Great Swords, as well as the Imperial Foot Traditional Swordsmen. So one has armor-piercing, one does have an anti-infantry. And these guys are kind of the evolution of the traditional kind of state troops and seem to be a pretty good unit so far from what I've experienced. Over here on the far side, you can see I do have spearmen and mortars. And something to note about this mod, guys, is even the spearmen, if you guys look at their stats, they have been changed from vanilla Total War Warhammer. So pretty much everything has been reworked. And even if the units are vanilla, they do have different stats and perform much differently than you would expect. Something that I really noticed about this mod is units just last longer in general. And the fighting, just, army losses doesn't seem to hit you as quickly. Up here in the center of my formation, I do have the Knights of the Hammers of Sigmar. So these guys are basically mounted warrior priests, extremely heavily armored, armor-piercing damage, and they do have the Lance formation, which is a pretty cool little thing to mix in there. Over here onto the high ground, I do have the Hochland Long Rifles, who you can see are already taking aim. They're definitely going to have a very good vantage point as the beasts advance down the hill with their 200 range. They're going to be supported over here by one of my new favorite units in this mod, the Huntsmen. So these guys basically look like the Rangers from Lord of the Rings. They have the hoods as well as some leather and quilted armor. But something that's neat about them is they have Vanguard deployment and they have a very good firing arc. So if there's a fight going down here, unlike the Hochland troops who might get obstructed if the Beastmen are down here or very close, the Huntsmen are going to be able to get consistent fire throughout the whole battle. In the front line, I have my traditional troops, the Armored Swordsmen. So now, most swordsmen have about 35 armor. You can actually choose to bring them with heavier armor, so they go up to about 65 and become a lot more durable. So I have a whole front line of Armored Swordsmen who are going to be supported by Free Company Militia, as well as the Nuln Engineers, which have these handheld grenade launchers. So grenade launchers in this mod are actually not bad at all. And for any of you guys that want to try it, definitely let me know your thoughts on how they work, but I had some pretty good success with these guys in this battle. Behind them, they're going to be supported by the Warrior Priests of Ulrich. So these guys are just heavy hitting, definitely a very cool unit. They have the Benediction as well. So these are the Warrior Priests of Ulrich, and I think the ones over here are the Warrior Priests of Sigmar. So definitely a very neat unit. I don't think they have heavy armor piercing, but their stats for a unit that, is a damage dealer, their defensive stats are incredible with 56 melee defense. In the back, they're going to be supported by the Knights of More Halberds. These guys are great as well. Anti-large and armor piercing. Good armor, good leadership across the board. And then they also do have another group of Leopold's Leopard Company. In the back, I do have some troops and auxiliary, just some traditional spears, as well as Boris Todbringer. I have a Bright Wizard, as well as, I think, Lore of Shadows is what I brought as well, so Fire and Shadows. Up on the high ground, I have some more Huntsmen, kind of already shooting down at some of these beasts that are advancing, so just a true testament to their range and the ability to get that good firing position. And over here on the far side of the battle, I do have Nuln Engineers with repeating rifles. So for any of you guys that have played Vermintide, these guys have a very interesting firing animation, and it's very similar to how the Empire Captain, well, I don't know if he's an Empire Captain in Vermintide, but the way he shoots that repeating rifle, it fires just like that. It's kind of like a mini Hellblaster volley gun with these guys, so very cool unit. And they're going to be supported by some additional Hammers of Sigmar, which are kind of the lower end of the Warrior Priest infantry, but they are still incredibly strong and do have armor piercing, unlike their alternatives over there, I think. Now, guys, let us go ahead and take a look at the Beastmen Horde. So they have a lot of cool new units. You can see these Gore Herds here are actually able to carry great weapons. Up here on the high ground, they do have some Bestigor Spear Herds to traditional troops, but this is where it gets really cool. So essentially they have Gores that come from the different Chaos Gods. So they have Pestigors here, which are of course Nurgle. So they have poison, and on top of that they have some other attributes that are very, kind of traditional for Nurgle style of play. They do have some Bestigors with shields up here, so that's something that is very characteristic of this mod, being able to add a lot of different, characteristics to your troops with, swords, shields, great weapons, whatever you want to add to them, you usually have an option in the loadout screen. And back here, guys, we have the Khorne Gores, so they have an anti-infantry bonus, they do magic damage, and they also do have the Primal Fury, which, again, the Frenzy is definitely a staple of Khorne-style troops. And down here, we have the Hordes just advancing. We have the Plague Bulls, which have poison. We have the Slann Bulls, which have heavy armor piercing and magic attacks. We have Khazrak One Eye right here. We also have additional Khorne Bulls, some Zon Bulls, which have an anti-infantry bonus as well as armor piercing. So each of the Chaos Gods, again, is being represented both in the Gore Herds, the Bestigor Herds, as well as with the Minotaurs. So very, very neat stuff. So guys, without further ado, let the battle begin. So you can see the forces are advancing down through the valley, and my Sunmakers and my Mortars are shooting in here. You can also see the Huntsman on the high ground doing some good work, but he does charge in here with these Minotaurs, with these Plague Bulls who are going to apply poison. And you can just see explosions just going off in the background as these armored swordsmen rush into battle for Sigmar, but it is definitely not going to be a good proposition because these Plague Bulls hit like absolute trucks. But up here on the high ground, you can see the Huntsmen as well as these Hochland long rifles are just gunning these guys down as the Warrior Priests of Sigmar do engage with their dual wielding weapons, but again, taking a very, very heavy charge, and I believe these are the Slann Bulls. So the Slann Bulls will be a great matchup for these guys because they have very heavy AP, whereas the Khorne Bulls do not. They have more of an anti-infantry bonus. But you can see the Hordes of Chaos and the Beastmen are just rushing down from the hill. Over here on the far side, these Warrior Priests of Sigmar are taking a huge beating from these Zon Bulls, and there's just an additional army of Bestigors and other units running around here. But I do have some Imperial Foot Soldiers who are going to march up and assist their Warriors of Sigmar right here, who are definitely a little bit overwhelmed. They're going to charge in and intercept some of these Beastmen troops, but you can see the Hochland rifles as well as all the artillery pieces are just blasting into these guys all across the valley, and Boris Todbringer is flying above. My troops are receiving, I believe a Devolve here, and Devolve does give -10 leadership. I believe it's 8 usually, so again, all of the stats on these different abilities have been pretty heavily modified. So Boris Todbringer does see this Gore Bull coming back here to go after the steam tank. So I do pull forward the Knights of More Halberds, who are going to get in there with their anti-large bonus, as well as Boris Todbringer. And you see the steam tank actually rams that Gore Bull on the ground, and Boris Todbringer is going to land. These Halberds are going to come up and assist as well. So over here on the far side of my battlefield, I do have some Hammers of Sigmar, as well as some Nuln Engineers with the repeating rifles coming over to reinforce, and they'll definitely give some much needed help to these armored swordsmen who are just being constantly pressed by these hordes of, it looks like there's some Pestigors back here, but these hordes of Beastmen. So the repeating rifles have set up here on the far side, and I can't wait for you guys to see the animation. It is definitely very cool. Granted, I guess it looks a little bit like traditional handgunner fire, but it has a bit of a different firing rate with it. So you can see they're going to line up right here, and they're taking aim, and they're going to fire any moment now. Any moment now. Don't leave me hanging, guys. But anyways, you can see these Hammers of Sigmar are going to advance in, and they're just going to do some serious work against these Pestigors. Though the Pestigors actually are probably an even matchup for these guys because they do have armor piercing, I think. No, they actually don't. So they have poison attacks. They do not have AP, so these Hammer of Sigmars are just going to tear into these guys. You can also see a massive volley coming out from the Nuln Engineers, which is going to tear into the flanks of these Bestigors. But thankfully for my opponent, for Black Iron, he does have the Bestigors with shields. So these guys are going to be a little bit more resilient against the traditional firepower. Over here, Khazrak One Eye himself has advanced in the front line with some of his Corn Bulls, and the Corn Bulls having racked up a good 47 kills already this early in the battle. So they're battling with the Warrior Priests of Ulrich, who do have their two-handed maces here. Definitely a very tough matchup because the Corn Bulls do have that anti-infantry bonus. You can see he also does have the Gors here, who do have the dual wield. Looks like the animation there is a little bit funny, but you know, what can you do? The dual wield is probably a little bit hard to implement, but the Warrior Priests of Ulrich putting up a good fight, having racked up actually only 2 kills. Oh no, those are the more halberds. I was going to say those were the supporting units. I was like, man, they only got 2 kills. They've been fighting in the front line that long, but I guess it is against Minotaurs. So over here on the far side, you can see some of these Ungor Poison Hunters are raining some good fire down here on the valley, whereas these Bestigors with shields are engaging and doing pretty well for themselves, even though they're fighting against, you know, some pretty strong Imperial foot soldiers over here. But guys, something very catastrophic has happened in the back line. Black Iron did vanguard some beasts on the far side. He was able to just run over my spears that were protecting the flank, and he got right into the back line. So these Gorehoofs, they're an anti-large Beastmen cav that has been added with the Radious mod. So they get a great surround on the Knights of the Hammers of Sigmar, and you can see they are falling to the poison, and these Gorehoofs are just running my troops down and also getting into my Hochland long rifles, and really have compromised my back line. They've also gotten back to the Sunmaker and have shut that down as well, so a very good tactical play, taking advantage of some pretty solid Beastmen tactics, and he has shut down my cav that I was keeping an auxiliary, essentially. So in the main battlefield, you can see it's just a very pitched fight. These armored swordsmen have pushed back and are battling some of these spearmen. The repeating rifles continuing to just shoot in here, and you can see the Pestigors are facing off against the Hammers of Sigmar over here. So the Hammers doing pretty well for themselves, actually only having racked up 4 kills, but they haven't taken a lot of damage. And the Pestigors, guys, are extremely durable, as are most Nurgle troops, but they are surrounded, and the Huntsmen on the high ground continuing to fire some volleys down into the valley. And these are definitely one of my favorite looking units from this mod. I mean, seeing these Empire troops with like bows like this and just firing from the high ground is just so cool looking. So the Huntsmen definitely serving their purpose. He also did have some Goreherds with halberds come over there on the flank and are fighting my veteran halberdiers. So a very kind of I wouldn't say thematic fight there, but a very kind of a mirror match, I should say. So Boris Todbringer has reinforced these Knights of Mor down here and is pushing through these troops. Definitely looking for some fresh meat here. You can see some of those Bestigors with the dual wielding weapons being sent flying, most likely by the steam tank, if I'm not mistaken. It must have been a blast that was shooting them. The Grey Wizard in the front line is fighting pretty hard, and you can see that Boris Todbringer has smelled blood in the water. He does see Khazrak One Eye, so he goes in there as hard as he can, but Khazrak is not alone. He has a lot of troops over here with him, and you can see Boris Todbringer is surrounded. He has Goreherds with shields. He also does have a Bray Shaman right here who appears to be casting some sort of a spell. I think he is casting a big Devolve on my troops, and it's doing very good damage. So he has Devolve and Flock of Doom, so Black Iron is doing a very good job stacking those, and it looks like Boris Todbringer is starting to go down. Khazrak has activated a Scourge, so he's heavily poisoned, and he is just taking a ton of damage. So I had no choice but retreat at this point, as the Beastmen leadership was able to chase me off the battlefield. Over here on the far side, Black Iron is sending in his auxiliary troops now that the battle is a little bit more underway. You can see these Slongors coming in here, and this is going to be a very devastating punch to my tattered troops here, because the Warrior Priests of Sigmar, even though they do have the Flaming Sword of Rune, are very, very beat up fighting against these Slon Bulls, who have racked up 73 kills. And guys, mind you, it is 73 kills against very elite armored troops of Sigmar. In the back, you can see these Hochland long rifles are still teeing off. They do have what appears to be about 90 kills, so they're just shooting into all these Beastmen right here, and that Cygor over there is also getting some good bombardment, having racked up 43 kills himself. So guys, if you just take an overarching look at the battlefield, it is just pure insanity. Just missiles going down everywhere. The Huntsman from the high ground and this mortar is continuing to shoot off at some of these missile troops in the back, but his firing line is doing some serious work against my troops, and I don't really have a heavy-duty counter. You can see my repeating rifles on the far side are shooting in here, doing some okay damage, but it's not enough to break them. You can also see a Penumbral Pendulum being dropped here, and it's going to be tearing into these Beastmen troops and definitely providing some much-needed support to my, pretty fatigued and worn-out halberds here in the front line. The veteran halberds. I got to get that pronunciation right. So again, guys, just keep correcting me till I get it. I eventually will. So still, guys, the bounce of power is pretty much dead even. And again, I think this is a pretty good testament to how well balanced this mod is. Granted, the bounce of power in a lot of these modded games isn't always super accurate, but still, in this one it seems to be the case, as it is quite even for the most part. So the Bestigors here in the front line with their dual wield, they're fighting, but they have been terrified. I think it was the steam tank that is actually terrifying these Bestigor herds with the dual wield. We do have some Slon Bulls as well as some Corn Gors coming over here to help in the middle of the battlefield, as my Warrior Priests and my Hammers of Sigmar are taking a ton of fire. You can see they're just getting gunned down here, and even though they don't have a ton of AP on those missile units, they basically have just such a heavy density of firepower that these guys are just taking a ton of damage. So I do have my Free Company Militia coming up to help out, as they are they were a little bit out of range, and they are a short range unit, but unfortunately these Minotaurs, and I believe these are the which ones are they? Let's go ahead and check. The Slon Bulls are coming in there, getting a great charge on my halberds and doing a great job of just essentially eradicating them. So over here in the front, you can see another Flock of Doom being dropped by the mighty Black Iron, doing a great job. In the back, I was able to pull some of my auxiliary spearmen who were able to catch some of these gore hoofs and finally take them down. They were just wreaking absolute havoc in the back line. You can also see I do have some missiles in the back, and I believe those are the Hochland long rifles who are getting some good supporting fire on these troops. And my huntsmen on the high ground continuing to do work, and you can see the flame vortex going off here, just doing massive damage against these Ungor poison hunters. And I think I actually cast it too, so I cast the Burning Skull as well as the Flame Vortex. So that's what's really cool about this mod, is that the magic, you start with 50 wins of magic, guys. And on top of that, the spells are all a little bit cheaper, so definitely just a blazing inferno just tearing apart these Ungors who are very lightly armored. Granted, not getting a ton of kills, but doing some good HP damage to these guys. And you can see I did overcast it, so it's just sitting there, just moving up the ranks and just roasting these guys. You can see their HP going down. So in the center pocket, it looks like the Beastmen have won the day here. In my center, forces of Sigmar, my halberds, as well as my warrior priests of Ulrich have crumbled. But over here, I am doing a little bit better for myself, but still, I just have some Imperial foot soldiers fighting, some Hochland long rifles over there. But here, this is my real strength. I have a very healthy firing line. So you can see these Nuln engineers, having racked up 107 kills, are just gunning down these Minotaurs. You can see only have 43 HP. So this last Minotaur is just kind of yelling with anger as his brothers get gunned down. But those repeating rifles, as well as those Free Company militia, have a pretty good sight on him. Although I believe I did switch targets right there, and the Free Company militia were still targeting this guy. Can't quite remember. But regardless, I was just trying to gun down all of his missile troops, and you can see that Minotaur does go down against the Free Company militia, and I do have a very healthy group of veteran halberds in the back line. The Khorne Gors are charging down the hill and are taking very heavy fire from these guys, but the Khorne Gors actually, like most Bestigor units, do have very good armor, so they're going to be pretty resilient against the lack of armor piercing on these Free Company militia. They're definitely going to be charging in, trying to collect some skulls for the Skull Throne over there. But you can see the Nuln Repeating Engineers up to 140 kills, so they've just been wreaking massive damage everywhere. And you can see that Boris Todbringer in the back is just on the hunt. And he was actually able to kill Khazrak one eye, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, no, he killed the Gorbel. So now he's jumping onto this caster over here in the back, so this Bray Shaman is going to be jumped by Boris Todbringer, who does have the Flaming Sword of Ruin. So you can see he hits massive damage on this guy with his 529 weapon strength. And I think Khazrak one eye did die. No, he's actually there in the back, so he's still alive. He was able to do a bit of a tactical retreat. But Boris, with the support of the Lore of Fire, is just doing outstanding damage to this Bray Shaman, and he's actually able to terrify him. The Steam Tank is also being chased by some Bestigors over here, but still, looks like the Khorne Gors were able to get onto some of these troops, but they are routed by the support of this Grey Wizard, so Gandalf getting in here doing a bit of a karate kick, and these Free Company militia are shooting these Khorne Gors as they run. So very good stuff from those troops. I am also unifying them with the Steam Tank, so I have a bit of a pocket. My Huntsmen on the high ground having only racked up 42 kills, but they've been shooting at very heavily armored troops. And guys, this is exactly what I was talking about. These Huntsmen have a great arc, so they're able to shoot like right over the high ground and just tap these troops when they're right there. But you can see Black Iron does have a very healthy infantry corps over here, and these are definitely some of the coolest new Beastmen units. So these are the Zongors. So the Zongors basically look like Beast Lords, but they do have some modified characteristics to their model, and they just leave it looks to be some sort of an aura in their wake, which is very neat. But they have racked up 42 kills. They're going to be intercepted by some armor swordsmen. They were chasing off my Hochland long rifles, and you can see I do have another group of Hochland long rifles who are kind of shooting them over here on the far side. My mortars are still in line for the most part. You can see my hammers of Sigmar definitely helped fight tooth and nail, and even though they had a really bad engagement, they still were able to get 43 kills for themselves. Definitely not a bad performance at all. My huntsmen, though, are unfortunately out of ammunition, which is tough. So you can see Boris Todbringer is around here somewhere. Let's go ahead and find him. I know he's flying. He's on the hunt for sure. I think he was coming over to help clean up this battle. And you can see the Imperial forces have set up a last bastion right here. I do have some armored swordsmen who are dying to a very, well-casted devolve. But these missile troops, the Ungor Poison Hunters, are just getting gunned down by those repeating rifles, which have such a fast fire rate. And man, they're probably also one of my favorite units. I really like the new missile units that the Empire troops have gotten. But guys, I definitely recommend checking out this mod. There are so many new units for every faction. And if you're looking for something fun to do between now and Total War Warhammer 2, it definitely adds a very fresh spin to the game, both for multiplayer if you just want to play with a friend, or also if you're looking to do campaign. That is probably really where these type of mods shine, is in the campaign, because people put in so much work on that stuff. So Boris Todbringer is coming over here to help with these Slongors on the far side, which again, we're doing some pretty good work. They've gone up to what appears to be, let's actually see what the Slongors have gotten so far. So where are they? I'm trying to get their model here. So Zongors, excuse me. So they have 46 kills. These Bestigor herds over here with the shields actually have 107 kills. So Boris Todbringer has come over into the forest to help these troops out, and the state troops are doing their best to fight. They do have the armor. They are the armored swordsmen, so they'll be a little bit more resilient against these guys, but these Zongors unfortunately do have armor piercing anyway. So Boris Todbringer, definitely realizing that he has stabilized that situation, he leaves his state troops to kind of finish them off, is going to go and try and take out Khazrak One Eye, who is leading a bit of a counterattack over here. You can see these Gore herds as well as these Slan Gores are just pushing in here. They're trying to take out the steam tank, which is actually taking a lot of damage from the armor piercing attacks of some of these great weapon Gores. But guys, Boris Todbringer sees his eternal nemesis over here, and he is going to go in for the kill. So Boris is going in for an epic charge. Khazrak is looking the other way. He does not see it coming, so he charges in here, knocking over his protectors and gets a great attack. And you can see Khazrak is fallen off his chariot and has been defeated by the mighty Boris Todbringer. So what an epic final showdown here between Boris Todbringer and Khazrak. But guys, Khazrak has fallen, and a lot of the Beastmen troops are definitely in pretty bad shape here, though they do have the support of Cygor over here on the far side. And you guys probably noticed the balance of power is definitely starting to favor, you know, the Empire forces, but in many games, like, there would just be mass army losses at this point with Khazrak, but I believe this mod has kind of modified that so the battles go longer and, you know, gives the, you know, army that is a little bit behind the opportunity to potentially come back. So over here you can see the last bastion of Slan Gores fighting. They have racked up 100 kills with their 53 weapon strength and their 54 melee attack and the magic damage as well. Doing a good job, but you can see this tank as well as some of my state troops, and I believe I even brought the Huntsmen down to battle because they were out of ammunition, so they're getting in there. They're just going full on Aragorn on these guys, getting in those jumping attacks. But man, this was such a fun battle. Definitely, guys, recommend checking out the mod. And yeah, so you can see Boris Todbringer just running around here. He's hunting down some of these elite units, just doing his best to finish them off. But we do have a mighty Cygor over there on the far side, and up on the hill, those Zongors are still holding up to 54 kills, and they do have, again, have the support of those best scores over here. So my troops, these Hochland long rifles, they did get pulled into melee, unfortunately, so they're not able to do quite as much as I wanted them to do. But I do have some other Hochland rifles with 9 kills over there coming back to the battle. So guys, we'll go ahead and fast forward a little bit here as the last part of the battle is a bit of a just cleanup and just a little bit of attrition. Mortis on the high ground actually having racked up 48 kills, which isn't great, but again, they did a pretty good job on the battlefield. As you can see, just corpses everywhere, just blood in the river, just a mixture of Imperial troops, state troops, all that kind of good stuff, as well as a lot of these Slan Bulls and these Corn Bulls. And that was definitely one of the coolest aspects of this mod, is seeing like just the god-specific units. And if you guys actually go ahead and take a look at the Chaos mod, you can see that they have like aspiring Nurgle, well, excuse me, the Norskin troops. So if you look at Norska, they have like Nurgle aspirants, they have Khorne aspirants, they have Slaanesh aspirants, and the Khorne, or the original Chaos faction, has a lot of like Nurgle's Chosen and heavy-duty troops. One thing that does differentiate it from Ultimate Chaos, which I've been showing on the channel, is that in Ultimate Chaos you have lords that are specific. So you have like Chaos Lord of Nurgle, Chaos Lord of Slaanesh. This mod does not have those. Granted, it does have a lot more variety in terms of like infantry and things like that. So very well played to my opponent, Black Iron. And guys, he does have a YouTube channel of his own now. I believe this is going to be one of his first videos. So guys, there will indeed be a link in the description and the comment section below. Go check him out. We're going to be doing a lot of thematic battles. He's also a very good Greenskin player. So if you guys are looking to learn quite a bit about Greenskin and some of those other factions, definitely go check him out and subscribe as well. So again, very well played. And this map was actually a vanilla map, guys. This wasn't a custom map, and it made for a very good kind of scenic battle. I like the valleys up here on the high ground where you can set up your missiles. It was definitely some very neat stuff. So let's go ahead and take a look at the breakdown. And we actually played with 40,000 resources in this battle. So it was a custom size, and it didn't seem to lag too much, which was pretty nice. But great performance from the Imperial foot soldiers. The Warrior Priest kind of got the brakes beaten off him by these Corn Gores and the Corn Bulls over there. So again, they're designed more against like armored infantry. So those massive armor-piercing Plague Bulls and Corn Bulls did some heavy-duty work. So again, very well played to Black Iron. It was super fun. Thanks for watching, guys. And let me know if there's any other matchups you guys would like to see with the Radious mod. We're going to try some Dwarfs versus Greenskins because there are so many cool units for the Dwarves and the Greenskins. You get Knobs, you can get Gob Knobs. There's just so much stuff. So guys, thanks again for watching. Have an excellent night and take care.